I'm going to introduce myself, and then my co-host is going to introduce herself, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation. My name, as I said, is Robert Manzer, and my role is as Provost of American Intercontinental University. I wanted to highlight at the beginning that prior to coming to American Intercontinental University, I've worked exclusively in small colleges, 2 Methodist and 2 Catholic. Originally, I was a great books professor, Plato to NATO. My field is political philosophy, a very traditionalist kind of a field. And I've worked in small colleges in academic administration as a Dean of Arts and Sciences and a Vice President of Academics. And I really wanted to emphasize that my perspective on working with faculty to move into adaptive learning and personalized learning is very much the perspective of an academic administration traditionalist. And by that, I just mean that the simple point that recognizing that if you're going to move anything forward within a university, you really have to do it through a very creative mode of faculty engagement. So I'm going to be really emphasizing the approach that we've taken as in a faculty engagement kind of approach. Molly?
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Sheahan, and I am Director of Faculty Development and Support here at American Intercontinental University. And the majority of my experience is in healthcare administration, and I joined higher education several years ago. And my experience is mainly in talent engagement and development with a specific focus on leadership development and performance consulting. And so a lot of what I've done has really been on focusing on building and maintaining efficiency in terms of human performance. So really establishing sustaining mechanisms to support the talent capital within organizations and working with developing leaders to support and maintain a healthy talent pool. So much of what we'll discuss today will be focusing on how we leveraged some of the organizational development concepts to support our faculty.
So that's a bit about our background, and we're going to address the challenge today of integrating personalized learning or adaptive learning into the classroom. And I just wanted to give you a sense of where we've ended up. This has been a very positive experience for us, and it's served, the introduction of adaptive learning has served as a catalyst for innovation at our university and with our faculty and thinking about our entire classroom and learning model. And it's also been the means of creating a tighter focus, a tighter community around the learner, faculty and staff, where the introduction of adaptive learning has really led us to, because we have more data, to think more about how can we improve our learning outcomes and our experience for our learners. So with that, I wanted to spend a little bit more on our basic approach to change management, which is a combination of traditional academic administration and organizational development thinking. With respect to academic administration, I wanted to make just a couple of points, and those of you who are in academic administration, I think, will recognize all of this. When you approach change management from a perspective of academic administration, you're talking about organic change. That is change that has its roots in the history and tradition of an institution, is not imposed from the outside, but in some way grows out of the experience of the institution, and in particular the experience of the faculty. There's also an existential dimension to academic administration, and that is to say that faculty are very much defined by their roles, by their work, and any kind of introduction of new technology or new pedagogy involves a kind of threat to the identity of faculty, in particular their understanding of themselves as subject matter experts and so forth. So it has to be managed very carefully, and the name of the game is a kind of engagement where you're able to begin to open up possibilities. And ultimately, the goal with academic administration change management is to create faculty champions that can carry the torch forward, and that's very much a core part of our approach.
And highlighting what Dr. Manzer mentioned about the organic growth within the community, from the organizational development perspective, we're really focused on the key tenets of organizational change relative to human capital performance. So really tapping into the community to continue to grow from within. And we all understand that every organization needs to change. Every organization is going to change. The world is really changing at a very fast pace, and we need to keep up with that. So the key for us was in managing and maintaining health of the organization through the process of that change and approaching change without the fear of the depth of the stages of that particular process. So we focused a lot on addressing the uncertainty that came with this type of a change, the change in the way that things are done, and helping to create a sense of control and allowing individuals to embrace a new way of doing things and helping them to find that personal connection with that change and that personal benefit, and also helping them to assimilate and identify with those sustaining mechanisms for that change.
So lastly, I just wanted to highlight our environment, which is a proprietary school environment, and there are some similarities and some differences. I just wanted to touch on that real quickly. As a proprietary school, we are a regionally accredited institution, which means we're subject to the same expectations of shared governance and faculty ownership of the curriculum. So in that sense, we're quite similar. Where we're different is that we're a largely online institution. 90% of our students are online, and that means we have a largely online faculty, and that faculty, as I have found, is very technology-centric and very open to the use of new technology, and also has a conviction about the superiority of online education, which was a discovery for me as I moved into this environment. So what I wanted to emphasize at the start here is that our environment is maybe different from the environment at your schools, but it's not as different as you may think. What I want to just emphasize is that we want to offer our experience today, and it may not be a roadmap for you, but we hope you can learn something useful from it. Our effort to move in this direction has involved leveraging a really built-out, robust training and development capacity, which may not exist at your institution, but we want to just offer it as a kind of an experiment, if you will, or a lab where you can draw from it what you can, and we hope it's helpful to you today. So the 5 principles that we're going to turn to for the meat of our presentation are really rooted in this approach that we've outlined of combining traditionalist academic administration and deeper sort of organizational development perspectives. But it all points to the same thing, which is empowering faculty to make the change. And these principles really grow out of this combination of academic administration and organizational development. Empowering faculty means we put a premium on addressing concerns of the faculty, working with the faculty to develop and outline a clear vision and to acknowledge growing pains. And what this boils down to in a word is really creating an honest and open dialogue that continues with the faculty. And that leads me to our first principle, which is the principle of involvement. By this, I really wanted to emphasize how we restarted a dialogue with the faculty around the introduction of adaptive learning into the curriculum. People want to be involved, and that's probably the best way to get buy-in, and we did that. So what we did in restarting the dialogue, and let me emphasize how we needed to restart the dialogue, we had begun an effort prior to my arrival at AIU of engaging in adaptive learning, but it really didn't have this faculty component. And so while we had expanded pretty pretty aggressively, faculty were not on board. So we restarted the dialogue. As you can suspect, when faculty are not on board, you just don't get the kind of outcome that you're looking for. So we restarted the dialogue, which was to open a two-way channel and to really insist and emphasize at the beginning that in no way was the introduction of adaptive learning an effort to diminish the faculty role. And in many ways, we thought sincerely that the introduction of adaptive learning was an enhancement of the role, or would require an enhancement of the faculty role. But we were intentional about how we framed this engagement, and that was in particular to emphasize the elements of the faculty role that involved passion for teaching, passion for students, a curiosity about new ways of teaching, and the craftsmanship of teaching. So in some ways, we were shifting the faculty concept, if you will, from a typical exclusive focus on subject matter expertise to these other springs, and trying to build off of these other springs to create an engagement level that would drive this whole initiative forward. So ultimately it boils down to, this is a very interesting thing, the introduction of adaptive learning, and it's about effective teaching. And if you're really passionate about effective teaching, then this is great. You'll really enjoy what's going on here. So I did want to just give you a quick example of a faculty member who experienced a shift here. I think it's a great example. We had a faculty member named Grace Telesco in our criminal justice area. She's a former New York policeman, and initially she was very skeptical about all of this, and really did see herself much more in the vein of a sort of stand and deliver subject matter expert. But as time has gone on, and as she's been working within the adaptive learning system, and in some ways taking a stance of somewhat different, and taking more responsibility for the outcomes within the course, the student outcomes, she has become really a complete convert. In fact, she talks about having kind of an epiphany-like moment, and has become really an evangelist within our institution for a focus on student learning. And I attribute that to the overall environment that we've created and that she's been very much a part of. She's one of a couple of faculty members now who leads forums for us on student motivation, and has really contributed a great deal.
So our second principle here is feedback, and one of the things that we really wanted to leverage was this peak with this relaunch. We had a real peak in faculty curiosity around what this adaptive learning system was, and we really wanted to leverage that peak in their curiosity by employing a range of different venues to gather feedback. We really needed to be open to embracing the good, the bad, and everything that came with that. And in many ways, this feedback was very useful. It was very useful, all of it, the good, the bad, the positive, the negative. It wasn't all roses, as Dr. Manzer mentioned earlier. There were bouts of resistance, and that's just the reality of any type of change. It's more of we had to take a particular approach on how we were managing these bouts of resistance. We didn't want to extinguish the reactions that we were getting. We really wanted to cultivate them and better understand the root of some of the feedback that we were being provided. So we started opening up some different venues for ongoing and collaborative feedback, and a lot of this was launched from an initial survey. During the relaunch, we launched a survey where we were asking faculty to provide us with very candid, open feedback. And from there, we were able to facilitate a series of open feedback sessions, non-putative, very collaborative, very much part of the discovery phase, and really allowing for a free-flowing dialogue with the faculty where they were free to share their initial thoughts around the use of the system. From there, we were able to schedule some informal meetings with faculty using what we call a cohort model, where we group faculty together based on similarities. So it could be a group of faculty that are in a particular course, that in a particular industry, or even based on just student demographic slices. So these informal meetings, again, were just an opportunity for us to gather some feedback, to continue that circular feedback channel with faculty, again, keeping them completely informal and non-punitive, but really gathering quite a bit of information that way, and also sharing information with faculty as well. This does still continue to provide an opportunity for faculty to share their ongoing thoughts and express their concerns as well. And again, gave us a great opportunity to check the pulse of the organization. So there's we talk about levels of resistance, and as we mentioned before, this wasn't all roses and glamorous. Faculty did have some genuine concerns, and in fact, there's a faculty member I recall when we were initially launching with our relaunch called me in an absolute panic when she found out that she was going to be moving into a course with this adaptive learning system, and she just had a variety of different concerns about whether or not she would understand the use of the system, how would she support her students, would it be too much, was it, she felt very overwhelmed at the thought of facilitating her course with this system. And we were able to work with her, get her into the system. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the strategies that we employed to gain familiarity and comfort, but it goes to show you that there were some faculty that just really did not, and some of it was a lack of understanding initially, but at the onset just could not even embrace the thought of an additional functionality within the classroom and where they fit with that, what their role was with that. Our third principle here is clarity, and segueing from feedback, we pulled faculty in to determine what was and wasn't working in the classroom. So we needed to better understand what practices would be sufficient within the classroom and how faculty fit into that. So together with the classroom data that we were able to pull to support student outcomes, we were able to align that with getting our faculty involved to help us to determine what were some of the effective practices, not just in the system, but in the classroom in general, just approaching the whole concept of instruction and strategy. And recognizing that this was an iterative process, we knew that it would require refinement and fine-tuning, but it was very much a collaborative effort with the faculty. We really pulled them in to help us to determine what some of those best practices were and to define expectations. So the more we knew, the better able we were to define effective classroom strategies, and definitely a lot of involvement from faculty in determining that. We also wanted to be best prepared to support our students and the potential for student growth, but we needed faculty, again, to help us to understand what that looked like and how to get there. So involvement and feedback really helped us to understand how we needed to get to full implementation, but it also meant that we had to have a very clear vision, and that vision, faculty would help us define that. We were very honest and upfront with communicating that this was not a flash in the pan. This is something that we really wanted to make it work, but we wanted to make it work together as in a collaborative effort. This really would revolutionize the role of faculty, although all would not immediately embrace it. We were very candid about that. We were very transparent about that. But again, it was a collaborative, organic growth within the community that helped us get to that point.
And now I'm going to talk about the fourth of the 5 principles, pillars for change. And this is about creating pillars to support a new faculty community and a new pedagogy utilizing adaptive learning. And really what I wanted to emphasize is that we took a very strategic approach to creating these pillars for change, and primarily that meant in creating an environment in which champions could emerge, work groups, forums, constant solicitation for involvement and feedback. And it did result in innovators stepping forward. It also resulted in faculty who were respected by their peers stepping forward, and the kind of support that we provided, they were able to move things forward. Also, helping to facilitate this outcome was very stated and constant emphasis on ongoing collaboration, setting up venues where we could have that collaboration be witnessed and evident to people, and then also just simply soliciting feedback from faculty around creating this very structure of support. What we tended to emphasize again and again was the fact that while we were engaged in putting these kinds of things together in the classroom, really to make this work, we needed the expertise of faculty and the practitioner's perspective, that none of this would be successful without constant recurrence to that perspective, and that really guided us as we move forward.
So our fifth principle is communication and support, and this principle really was an outgrowth of the 4 previous principles that we mentioned, making possible an approach to training and support that was embraced by faculty for the majority. So the approach to our support model was really based on what we would consider an effective service model. We improved the way we interacted with faculty, with what we would call the white glove concierge treatment, by creating a very strong presence at every turn with a quick response rate to faculty concerns, with an open door policy for one-on-one coaching and one-on-one collaboration, group collaboration. We really were able to create a strong connection with faculty wherein they knew that they were supported, they knew that they would get the assistance that they needed when they needed it. But one of the very first pivotal moves was to create a comprehensive training and support structure and to secure a collaborative team that could work together to support and manage the use of the system. Training was very much necessary. It was required, but it didn't feel required because at that point many faculty members were very anxious to learn about the system. In fact, we had different iterations of a training program rolling at that time, and faculty were emailing us asking when it was their turn to go through the training, when they were going to get to take a look at the system and get comfortable with it and get the support that they were anxious to get, because enough had been communicated about it at that point, and we had our early adopters and our pillars for change communicating within the community that it was definitely piquing interest. Our goal was really to enhance faculty comfort as well. Our initial survey results really yielded one of the biggest requests was a sandbox environment to help them to gain some familiarity and comfort in the tactical and navigational aspects of the system, as well as to better understand what students would be seeing and how students would experience the system. So from that request, we were able to gain access to a sandbox environment, and they were able to, again, gain that familiarity, and of course with familiarity comes confidence, and we found that coming out of the training program, faculty felt much more confident in going live in the actual classroom. And then we built some self-directed courses which really provided the next level of support, but these courses were really a result of the involvement and the feedback from faculty, where they were able to help us to better understand and refine effective strategies for instruction in the classroom. So all of this is part of that circular feedback channel. And then we were consistently pushing out information in every possible way, through newsletters, through faculty meetings. Every opportunity we had to get in front of faculty and interact with them, we absolutely took advantage of that, again, through that consistent feedback and kind of mining through the information that they were providing us. Our goal was really to reach faculty where they were, when they needed it, and through this comprehensive program, we were able to get that started.
So now I'm going to go ahead and sum up here. We've got about 5 minutes left, and after I sum up, then we'll have opportunity for questions for those who'd like to stick around. I know we've got a couple of questions in the chat pod that we can respond to. What I really want to emphasize today is just that our involvement in introducing personalized learning into the classroom, adaptive learning has resulted in the creation of a different kind of academic community, a different kind of faculty community that's really focused on thinking through how to be as beneficial as possible to the learner. It really has been an opportunity to embrace a more effective pedagogy. So for those who were really intrigued by that because they have a passion for their students or they have a passion for teaching, they just get out of bed in the morning to do those things. This was an opportunity to teach in a different way. That is to say, teach where you have all this information on your students that's coming through the adaptive learning platform, and really is a different kind of teaching because you have all that information. And I think people can relate to the experience, I know I can, of teaching a class and feeling like you are making the kind of progress that you hope for, and then being awakened by the midterm performance and realizing that students were not, in fact, where you thought they were. That's very different with this model of teaching, where you really do know in real time where students are, what do they need help with, how do you intervene, what are some strategies of intervention. So you begin to think about, well, what can I do to impact student motivation? They don't seem to be responding in this certain way. You just have more tools to work with, and as a result, you have a focus and a real community focus ultimately on how can we be more effective with our classroom. So our approach to achieving this new community has been through academic administration and organizational development insights. As we've outlined today, that's where the 5 principles come from. And there's a real premium here on organic change and a premium on supporting the faculty. And I can't emphasize enough how having a 3-person team of faculty development and support has really been the support for this kind of new community. It's a community based on engagement, constant engagement, where we're working through cohorts, working through forums, having meetings, constant consultation with the faculty about what's going on and how can we improve and how can we take this to the next level. So to sum up, this introduction of personalized learning into the classroom has been a real catalyst for innovation. And it's led beyond simply the adaptive learning piece of courses to rethinking all aspects of the learning model in the classroom. Bottom line, and I don't know that we've mentioned this, is the fact that the students, our students, and we have adaptive learning deployed throughout our curriculum now, they really respond very positively to it. They like doing it. It's a immersive experience that adapts to the learner, and they really respond very positively to it. And as a result, it's caused us to look at discussion boards and live chats differently. Are we getting the same kind of outcome from those elements? And we've begun to think creatively about those aspects of the classroom too. So it really has been a catalyst for innovation across the board. And finally, I want to just end with this point that I began with, that when you create an environment where faculty are intrigued by the new tools and they have additional data on students and they're thinking about how to improve student learning, you really kind of give faculty the permission to be all in on student learning. And I know that this may sound like sort of a foreign idea, but in many ways I think that's what we've been able to achieve here, is the fact that our community as a whole is being supportive of faculty, being really into how to change things in their classrooms and in the learning model generally to achieve better student outcomes. So I think we've achieved a very supportive, engaging community. As Molly has emphasized, it hasn't been all roses, but we have had a number of cases, like I mentioned earlier, of the Grace Telesco, that sort of epiphany transformation where faculty all of a sudden said, hey, why not go all in on this? Why not go all in on student learning, and how can I make that happen? Just another example I'll mention is that we're in the process of an in-service weekend where we have faculty attending different things, and we've had tremendous attendance. I did a faculty meeting for 235 faculty on Monday, and we're having similar attendance for another event. So we really feel very good about the community that we've created, and it's been, very intentional to create that, and it has been kicked off by the introduction of personalized learning. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for making the time. I know you're all busy, and I think we've been able to keep more or less the time here. And if those of you who need to take off, feel free, and but we'll stick around for some additional questions if people have them. So thanks again for making the time to attend today.
And on behalf of Realizeit, we'd like to thank Dr. Manzer and Molly for hosting today. We will stick around here and feed some questions. Thank you to everyone who has submitted. I'll continue to moderate that and ask questions. Wanted to let everyone know that can't stay on that we will record, or we have been recording this session, and we'll share it with everyone at the conclusion in the event that you can't stay. So our first question here is the faculty buy-in and engagement the same with adaptive as it was in the very early days of online and LMS adoption? Have we been here before? Oh, Rob and Molly, I think you're on mute. There we go.
Sorry there. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think there are some definite similarities here, although this goes further because you are intruding further into the online classroom here. I guess transitioning faculty from a face-to-face classroom environment to an online is also a pretty big transformation. Here, with adaptive learning, you really are taking a step, though, towards a kind of a machine-facilitated learning where the faculty member still has a very important role to play because they need to be monitoring, they need to be paying attention to what's going on and what students are learning and what they're struggling with, and if there are themes, broader themes that need to be addressed for a broader group of students, you need to be on that, and there's a lot of interest in developing successful intervention techniques, but in some ways it is a complementary effort when learning is taking place within that machine-based environment. The faculty needs to in some way adopt an adaptive approach and in some ways take a step back from being the center of the learning experience. So in that way, it is a pretty intrusive change and a little bit different from moving from face-to-face to online. But in all of these cases, I think you have the opportunity in the introduction of a new tool or in the induction of a new modality to engender and support an attitude, a passion for teaching as effectively as possible, and the opportunity to turn faculty, in a sense, outward from an inward focus of teaching based on their own experience as professors or experiences in grad school. And I know that's a pretty long journey. I've traveled it myself. I mean, as a former great books professor, what did I know about any of this? I mean, I really did have an approach which was drawn from my experience with really good professors in graduate school, but didn't involve much sophistication around student learning. And all of this, I think, is just an invitation to faculty. If it's presented the right way, it's an invitation that they're willing to consider, an invitation to, in some ways, getting more sophisticated, more serious about student learning outcomes. So we've tried to couch it all in those terms and be very sensitive to the fact that we're asking faculty to travel on this journey, and we can understand why it might be one that is difficult to begin to undertake.
Great. Our next question is, what do faculty do with the data and analytics, and what are some examples of their interventions to guide the learner?
So this one, we could probably host a whole other webinar just on this alone, because the system is very, very rich with data, very helpful, very useful data on a variety of different levels. So I would say probably the quickest answer would be we worked with faculty to really refine the use of the data in terms of the individual student as well as approaches to class, so group interventions. And you know, by really diving into the data that was provided and trying to hone in on the data that could be used on a day-to-day basis, as well as the data that can be used, you know, on a weekly basis, et cetera, was a great work with the faculty. But from there, what we were able to do was really, again, determining what could faculty use in terms of the rich data that was provided on a daily basis, and what could they do with that, both at the individual level as well as the classroom level, to help to determine where some of those interventions were necessary. I would say that a big benefit, if I could just add this to my answer here, is that the biggest benefit is that faculty had information about student progress much earlier than they did before. So instead of having to wait for a student to begin to engage with the content or, you know, submit an assignment for the instructor to provide feedback, they had at the moment that student accessed the system and did any work in it. So that was a big revelation, I think, for our faculty, was that they were able to start to identify individual needs as well as group needs much sooner in the classroom. From there, what they're able to do, just based on the variety of different data that's available, from the amount of time that students are spending consuming that content, how they're responding to the interaction within the system, where their strengths are in terms of content, where their opportunities are in terms of content, faculty can employ a variety of different strategies to support students, whether that be directing them back into specific content within the system, or even taking opportunities in the classroom itself to change the instruction. So we talked to faculty about and worked with faculty about adaptive instruction within the classroom as well. So that could be, you know, adapting the plan for interacting with students during a live chat in that particular week, or refining the types of information that they were providing in terms of learning material or external support that they were providing. So there's so many different ways to answer that question, but I would say that definitely the response is rich with data. We worked with faculty to refine where they should, you know, what should they be looking at on a regular basis, and how that could really help them to adapt their instruction and support students.
Great. Our next question is, what LMS do you use, and does Realize integrate with it, or do you have to use that system only?
So our LMS system is homegrown. It's a proprietary platform, and the adaptive learning system that we use interfaces with our LMS. So there are points of connection between the adaptive system and our LMS where the two can work together. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And just a reminder to everyone, please feel free to reach out to us after the event. We'll follow up with the recording, but if you do have specific questions or we didn't completely answer your questions, we'll definitely follow up and get you the answers that you need. So with that, I'll move on to the next question. Can you speak about student training if offered for adaptive courses?
Sure, that's actually an excellent question. So the student training from on our side comes in a variety of different methods. So we have data technology in our orientation course, which gives students an opportunity to, again, gain some familiarity and comfort with using the system, as well as, you know, pique their interest in upcoming courses. So, and we have a variety of different mini videos that we produced for students on some of the common features within the system. But in addition to that, we do prepare faculty to support students within the classroom. So not only do we support faculty in facilitating in the system, but we also prepare faculty to support the students, and some of that is in how to optimize their learning, but also how to use the system. So we created some resources that our faculty could use within the classroom to support students. We also put together a group of functional heads from within the university to serve on what we called our adaptive communication task force. And from there, we were able to see the student life cycle as a whole from beginning to end, and we were able to vet through together as a team what students needed at that particular point in their life cycle in terms of the adaptive support. We created some comprehensive guides that are used across all functions now within the classroom, just to ensure that we were providing a consistent voice and a consistent level of support with students. So we really provided an additional support structure within our functions within the student life cycle as well.
Great, thanks, Molly. Our next question is, can you share what courses and subjects you incorporated the technology in, undergrad or grad level?
Yeah, I'll take that, and we are very unique in the sense that we have incorporated adaptive learning across our curriculum. We have 4 areas of programming in business, IT, CJ, and education, and we have programs at the undergraduate level and at the master's level in education and in business and IT. And we've incorporated adaptive into all of those programs. We've also incorporated it into our general education classes. So we have it across the board, not in all courses. We have it in all of the core courses in each one of the programs. And we have it in all of our general education courses, and we have it in select specialization courses, but we continue to build out. So what does this mean? This means that unlike, I think, the early emphasis on personalized education or personalized learning, which has been more confined to quantitative subjects like math or remedial, we've looked at adaptive learning as a sort of a total learning solution, and adjusted our thinking around curriculum and faculty to embrace that education technology. So it's a distinctive effort here, and it's an ongoing one where we have learned a tremendous amount. We've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, and we've made a lot of changes and pushed to some conceptual breakthroughs where you see things differently, and it is different. It's used differently within each of the areas, and it hasn't all been success out of the box. We've learned a lot of things. So give you an example. With an English class, how do you use adaptive learning in an English class when English writing classes are all about writing and being reviewed and getting feedback and making adjustments and so on and so forth. What we've done is to use adaptive learning to teach the rules of writing, and this really kind of points in a way to, I think, something of a clarification that has come to us by virtue of doing this, is that adaptive learning is really an effective way to have students move through content. And in some ways, it's more effective, particularly for underprepared students, than reading. Reading materials and reflecting on a variety of materials and synthesizing those materials, which is kind of the classic learning model. With adaptive learning, you're able to have students encounter content in a adaptive, immersive fashion, which just seems to work. So they get out of the learning materials much more, which they're able to bring to the other dimensions of the course. So we continue to learn, but it is a definite success from the perspective of students' willingness to engage and master more content. Now, absolutely, we need other kinds of assessments and other kinds of learning experiences as part of those courses, but in some ways it gives us a couple of steps ahead because we know that the students are getting more out of their learning materials and more out of their learning experience before coming to the other areas. So what I really wanted to emphasize is that we've used adaptive learning in a across the board manner, and I think it has helped shed some light on how to be more effective with a whole range of students, but especially underprepared students, of which we have many. And it points to the opportunity for scaffolding students and to have a gradual increase in the level of challenge throughout the curriculum. Adaptive is something that works at all levels, can be treated differently, but it allows us to build a good foundation and then to focus our attention on how do we effectively scaffold students out of the adaptive learning platform to the successful completion of individual projects and writing assignments and other kinds of assignments. So I hope that is helpful.
Okay, and now we have our last question, and that is, are certain courses more tailored to using adaptive learning than other courses? For example, if the course is topic-based versus a course that is more sequential. If so, any ideas or suggestions on how to overcome the topic-based courses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll attempt a response, and if I don't give you an adequate one, feel free to follow up with me. I'd be glad to talk with you afterwards or at some point. You know, all of our courses are the product of a really very massive effort to build learning maps that involve faculty. So the content for the classes is pretty well set within the learning map, and it will typically run through the entire course, though it's divided up into units. So you know, a special topics course would be something that you would have to do the same build, which you're probably not likely to do unless it's a course that you're going to continue to offer multiple times. So I hope that gets to the question. I would add, in addition, though, that adaptive learning is primarily about the communication of content. So the development of skills is something that I think we still have a ways to go in terms of how to use adaptive learning. And so, for example, the development of writing skills or the development of speaking skills. Right now, that's not something that's handled through our adaptive learning platform. And in our IT program, where you're developing programming skills and network skills and so forth, that too has to be handled in a different manner than adaptive. But the adaptive piece, as I've emphasized, is really, I think, proving to be outstanding in building a foundation of content knowledge within the learners that we can then build upon. And it's a much more reliable foundation. I know from my own teaching experience, you know, I always wanted students to do the reading before they came to class, and so I could have a class that built on it. And maybe I was a sellout, but I know that in my own teaching I started to plan to have a very effective class without students having done the reading, because I just couldn't count on that. And you know, you go through the whole process of giving quizzes and all of that. With adaptive learning, you have a step ahead because the students like doing it and they can do it before they come to class. Now, we have just begun to deploy adaptive learning into a ground format where we actually are using it as a complement to face-to-face classes, and so we're looking at the advantages of what I just described in a ground setting. But that really is the crux of it, is the opportunity to have students get a better foundational knowledge in the content areas. And in business and CJ and to some extent IT, these are content-rich programs where a large part of the program is just simply the transmission of content. I know that Realizeit has worked successfully with schools that focus on health sciences, and health sciences is also an area where you've just got a lot of transmission of content, and I think it's just a much more effective way to do it than to have lecture or to have lecture combined with reading. And obviously you want to stimulate thinking and so on and so forth, but it's a great way to build that foundation, and that's where it's been most effective for us.
All right, that is actually our last question for today. If we didn't get to you, please feel to reach out to us at realizeitlearning.com, and we're happy to answer any additional questions. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and thank you to Dr. Manzer and to Molly for their time today. We do have another webinar coming up on April 30th with Judy Komar from Career Education Corporation, and we hope that you can all make it to that one as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.